Now we're ready for Act 5. I thought some review might be in order. So hopefully you guys watched it, and if you didn't, it's okay. It was just review. It's no big deal. All right, so in Act 5, Romeo is in Mantua. And he tells us at the opening of the scene, he has a soliloquy because he's by himself. He's happy today because he dreamt of Juliet last night. And it was a good dream. He says, I dreamt my lady came and found me dead. Strange dream that gives a dead man leave to think, and breathes such life with kisses in my lips that I revived and was an emperor. Ah, how sweet is love itself possessed, when but love's shadows are so rich in joy. So if you're familiar with your story, you know how closely this dream is going to come to fruition in this act. It's like he has a premonition. Again, this is not his first premonition during the play. Okay, so then Balthazar enters, who is Romeo's servant, and Balthazar is welcomed because Romeo thinks that he's come with news sent from the friar, because remember, the friar tells Romeo that he will send him word with Balthazar. So when Balthazar first comes in, he says, dost thou not bring me letters from the friar? Like, surely you have a letter from the friar, that's why you're here. And then he asks after Juliet, he asks after his father, and he says, nothing can be ill if she be well. And Balthazar says, then she is well, and nothing can be ill. Her body sleeps in Capel's monument, and her immortal part with angels lives. I saw her laid low in her kindred's vault, and presently took post to tell it you. Oh, pardon me for bringing these ill news, since you did leave it for my office, sir. So Balthazar tells Romeo that he saw Juliet being buried. He saw her dead body. And Balthazar told Romeo that she's dead. And Balthazar says she's in heaven now. Romeo says, is it even so? Then I defy you stars. Thou knowest my lodging, get me ink and paper, and hire post horses. I will hence tonight. So Romeo tells Balthazar, get me pen and paper. So he wants to write a letter. And we're going to find out in a later scene who he wrote the letter to. And he's going to hire post horses. So he's going to hire horses and travel to Verona tonight. Balthazar says, I don't think this is a good idea. Your looks are pale and wild, and do import some misadventure. So Balthazar thinks that Romeo's going to hurt himself. Romeo says, tush, thou art deceived. Leave me and do the thing I bid thee do. Hast thou no letters to me from the friar? Balthazar, no, my good lord. Okay, so Balthazar leaves, and Romeo says, well, Juliet, I will lie with thee tonight. Romeo's going to be with Juliet in her tomb. And Romeo remembers that he saw an apothecary. So an apothecary is similar to the way the friar was describing using herbs and plants. An apothecary is like a druggist. He makes medicines. And the apothecary that Romeo happens to remember is a very poor apothecary who is not doing well in his business. He has very little goods to sell, and his shop is kind of run down. And Romeo thinks that since it is punishable by death to sell poison in Mantua, because if you're selling poison, nothing good is going to come of that. Like, poison is bought to kill people. So this apothecary is going to risk his life selling poison to Romeo. But because the apothecary is so poor, and doing so badly in his business that Romeo thinks he will do it anyway. And when the apothecary comes onto the stage, when Romeo arrives at his shop, Romeo asks him, sell me this poison. And he says that the life-weary taker may fall dead, and that the trunk may be discharged of breath as violently as hasty powder fired doth hurry from the fatal cannon's womb. An apothecary says, I have drugs like that, but I can't sell them to you. It's illegal. And they'll put me to death. Okay, Romeo says, you're going to starve to death if you don't take this money. And I'll make you rich. Take this money. And this is on page 3 of scene 1. And the apothecary says, I don't want to, but I will, because I need the money that desperately. And Romeo also tells the apothecary that he doesn't plan to kill anybody else, only himself. So Romeo says he's not going to murder somebody. He's going to commit suicide. So I'm going to ask you in this scene whether the apothecary is not necessarily right, but whether he should be blamed for Romeo's death. Okay, so the apothecary says, drink this, and it will kill you quickly. Okay, Romeo says, there is thy gold, worse poison for men's souls, doing more murder in this loathsome world than these poor compounds that thou mayest not sell. I sell thee poison, thou hast sold me none. So Romeo gives him the money and says money does worse things than poison. And Romeo says, come cordial and not poison. So it's like medicine to make him better. Go with me to Juliet's grave, for there I must use thee. So Romeo is on his way to Juliet in the Capulet's tomb. Romeo has poison and he intends to drink it there so he can be with Juliet in death. That is scene 1. I will see you on scene 2.